Pokémon will always be one of my very favorite video game series. I will never forget completely losing myself as a kid in the vast, expansive world of Pokémon Yellow version on the Game Boy Color. It was a formative experience for me, and one that completely shaped the way I saw video games going forward. It might not seem like much nowadays, but back in 1999, the Kanto region seemed absolutely massive. I couldn't believe that this huge world, with what felt like countless towns and cities and routes to explore, could all fit in your pocket. I spent hundreds upon hundreds of hours with that game as a kid, and have continued to play every mainline Pokemon game ever since. And while the series has had many highs for me over the years, with Pokemon Silver and Pokemon Platinum probably being my two favorite games, nothing has ever quite compared to the feeling of immersion and awe I experienced while exploring Kanto for the very first time back in 1999. So when Pokémon Scarlet and Violet were revealed to be the first true open world games in the Pokemon series, I was over the moon with excitement. Sword and Shield took a small step in this direction with the wild area, but this looked to be an actual true, go anywhere, do whatever you want open world adventure. I tried to keep my expectations in check, as I had been growing increasingly disappointed with the direction of the series in recent years, but I couldn't help but feel like this might be the first mainline Pokemon game to capture that sense of joy and adventure that I first felt when playing Pokemon Yellow all those years ago. Well, unfortunately, I was very, very wrong. Scarlet and Violet's huge open world might seem ambitious on the surface, but really all it does is help mask a complete lack of ambition in other, more important areas, which leaves the whole experience feeling flat and empty. So let's talk more about that open world first. The performance issues have already been beaten to death, so I won't spend too much time on them, but yeah, this game runs like absolute crap. Frame dips and pop-in issues abound everywhere you go, and while I didn't experience too many game crashes myself, it did seem to be a common issue for many others. The world itself is also not much of a looker. This is easily one of the uglier Switch first-party games you'll play, and while all of these are significant issues and did hamper my enjoyment of the game a significant amount, there were other things about the open world that personally bothered me even more. Part of what made Kanto so special in the Gen 1 Pokemon games is that it felt like an actual lived-in place. Sure, it's not much by today's standards, but back then, rolling into a new town, familiarizing yourself with the layout, and popping into the locals' homes to chat with them made it feel like you were part of that world and exploring an actual place. I was looking forward to doing the same thing in Scarlet and Violet until a couple hours into the adventure, it came to a pretty shocking realization. None of the buildings in the games have interiors. Yeah, you heard that correctly. There are no interiors anywhere. It's well documented that Scarlet and Violet most likely suffered from a rushed development cycle, and to me, even more so than the horrendous performance issues, this is the most glaring evidence of that. It's like the open world took so much time that the development team didn't have any time to design actual interiors to the buildings. Outside of the university and the gym buildings, all of which look exactly the same, there are almost no explorable interiors in the entire game. Even the Pokemon centers are outside in the form of gas station-like kiosks. This might not seem like a huge deal to some, but to me I found this extremely immersion-breaking. Discovering a new town or city began to lose its magic very quickly when I realized that there was nothing to do in them other than wander around and look at the blurry, ugly buildings. The cities in this game are far bigger than anything we've seen in the series to date, but that achievement feels completely hollow when you realize that they didn't design any interiors. No longer do the cities feel like places where actual people live. They just feel like large, open-air gatherings where you can watch NPCs clip in and out of existence due to the horrible pop-in issues. This is a real shame because some of the cities and towns do have personality and feel like they could have been memorable, but when you cut such substantial corners, they just feel uninspired and empty. Unfortunately, the corners being cut here extend far further than not designing building interiors. A key component of the Pokemon experience has always been customization. Obviously, the biggest aspect of this is building your dream team of Pokemon and making a squad completely unique to you, but recent games have done a good job of extending that customization aspects to other areas as well. Say what you will about Pokemon Sword and Shield, and those games do have plenty of issues, But at least they paved new ground for the series by giving the player a ton of control over their avatar. Other games have dabbled with the idea prior, but Sword and Shield took it to an entirely new level, allowing the player to fully customize their trainer's face, hairstyle, and outfit. And while Scarlet and Violet don't completely do away with these features, it does take a baffling step in the wrong direction. You're still able to customize your character's face and hairstyle, but now you're confined to only a couple of different school outfits to choose from. You can still change up your backpack and socks and gloves and other accessories. But these are minor changes that pale in comparison to decking your trainer out in a leather jacket and sunglasses like you could in Sword and Shield. Again, this might not seem like a huge issue, but customization is at the core of the Pokemon experience. And to scale back on one of the best features of the previous generation is a choice that simply makes no sense. It again speaks to a likely rushed development cycle and corners needing to be cut somewhere. But nowhere is the lack of ambition more apparent than in Scarlet and Violet's post-game content. Post-game content has long been a staple of the Pokemon franchise, and while the quality and length of this content used to be one of the franchise's greatest strengths, things have been going in the wrong direction with recent entries, and Scarlet and Violet unfortunately do not buck the trend here at all. It's not all bad. Traveling to Area Zero after clearing the game's 3 main storylines does offer some fantastic moments, including some of the best story beats the series has ever seen. Unfortunately though, that portion of the game is over within a couple of hours, and there's not many redeeming qualities about the post-game after that. In my opinion, Pokemon post-game content peaked back in the Heart Gold, Soul Silver, and Platinum era of the games. Not only did those games feature huge new areas to explore after completing the main quest, an entirely new region in Heart Gold and Soul Silver's case, but they also featured meaningful and challenging single-player content in the form of the Battle Frontier. The Battle Frontier was a perfect supplement to battling others online, and allowed you to test your team against legitimately challenging computer opponents in unique and fun ways. Now, for whatever reason, Game Freak seemingly hates the Battle Frontier, which is why we have not seen it since Heart Gold and Soul Silver all the way back in 2009, but at least we've still been able to enjoy the Battle Tower. The Battle Tower has been a mainstay in the series for a very long time, and even though it lacks the creativity and breadth of its Frontier counterpart, it has at least still always been a fun way to enjoy challenging single-player battles after completing your initial adventure. Well, until Scarlet and Violet. For the very first time since Pokemon Crystal, all the way back in 2000, there is no Battle Tower or Battle Tower replacement here. Now, some might mention the tournament that the university puts on that you're allowed to participate in after clearing the main adventure. And I guess technically, yeah, this is the game's attempt at replacing the Battle Tower. But there's no way around the fact that this is the laziest, weakest attempt at replacing it that we've ever seen. When you join the tournament, you go through a handful of battles against a rotation of the same characters every time, and it's over within 20 minutes or so. The battles are not particularly challenging if you have a competitive team, and there's no extra incentive to extend your win streak or climb the ranks like previous iterations of the Battle Tower have had. The customization aspect that Scarlet and Violet drops the ball on is very integral to the Pokemon experience, but post-game content might be even more important, and it's hard to imagine Game Freak fumbling it any worse than they do here. Scarlet and Violet aren't all bad. As I mentioned before, some of the story beats are the best the series has ever seen, and moving towards a big open world seems like a good step in the right direction for the series. However, whether it was due to experience working on such a big world, or a rushed development cycle, or something else, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet crumbles under its own ambition. Sure, its open world is far bigger than anything we've ever seen in the franchise before, but at what cost? If this many corners had to be cut to bring that world to life, then I would simply prefer the series return to its 2D roots. The Pokemon games have been around for a long time, and while I'm glad that they're trying new things, it's hard for me to view Pokemon Scarlet and Violet as anything other than a massive disappointment.